Hello, everybody. Mark Weissy here with Maple Capital Partners. So we've got another great installment where we're going to talk to an entrepreneur, a friend of mine, and somebody who's absolutely killing it at real estate. This is Tyler Chesser. He's the co-founder and managing partner of CF Capital, which is a private equity real estate firm specializing in multifamily investments. With over 12 years of experience, Tyler has grown CF Capital's portfolio over 1,450 units. Wow, that's impressive. Valued at over $175 million across the Midwest and Southeast. He holds the prestigious CCIM designation, and his expertise has earned him recognition as a rising star by CIRE magazine and one of the 20 people to know in real estate by Louisville Business First. Tyler is also a sought-after speaker at major industry events, sharing his insights on multifamily investment, capital raising, and asset management. We'll definitely get into some of that stuff. His leadership, marketing acumen, and strategic vision have been key in positioning CF Capital as a trusted partner in real estate investment. Besides all that, I know Tyler as a real estate and performance coach, an awesome friend, a mentor, and then also a great father and husband, and somebody that I strive to emulate as well. So Tyler, welcome to the show.
Mark, thank you so much, man. It's a pleasure to be with you. And as we were just talking right before we got started here, I really admire your giving heart and your thought process of just providing value, developing deep and long-term relationships. I know that that's been something that I've been appreciative of having with you over the past few years, and, excited to be able to deliver hopefully some value to folks who are listening to this conversation as well. Just in the sense of, rising tides lift all ships. And I think that the abundance mentality that you've been able to exhibit and you continue to exhibit and lead the way with is something that I admire. So happy to be here and support you and the folks that are participating here.
Wow, really know how to make a guy feel special. So appreciate it, Tyler. And right back at you. So I guess as we dive into it, I just read a little bit of your background. My audience would probably naturally be curious about how you got started in real estate. I know you started working in corporate marketing, but I'm curious how you made the transition or how you landed in real estate.
It's so interesting. Like now that I'm kind of think back to this, it's slightly fuzzy, but you mentioned in my bio that I got started in real estate almost 12 and a half years ago, 13 years ago. So it's starting to get a little bit in the distance there, but I started my career in the corporate world, and I was kind of climbing that ladder. And I noticed as I was climbing that ladder that it was going to be a very, very long climb before I got to where I wanted to be in that world. And I learned a lot about just the corporate politics of really corporate America at the end of the day. And it didn't fully resonate with me. And it was something that if I wanted to go where I wanted to go, I didn't feel like the authenticity of my actions necessarily were going to get me there. It was more so about, kind of the inauthentic relationships that I developed along the way to get there, because that was really kind of the name of the game. And I think that is, to a certain degree, the name of the game in that world. And so long story short, I was, starting to kind of have some discontent with my career path at that time. And I decided that I wanted to explore other options. The first thing I did was get my resume out and, start talking to some other corporations. And I quickly realized that I was just, putting a Band-Aid on an issue that wasn't really getting to the heart of the matter. And so long story short, as I was having those conversations and as I was, interviewing for other jobs and so forth, I did kind of stumble upon my network, which had a lot of different backgrounds and, realms of expertise. And a couple of the folks in my network were involved in real estate in a couple of different capacities, one of which was a real estate sales broker. And I didn't know anything about real estate at the time. I owned a house. I owned my own house, and I actually rented it out to, one of my friends from college at the time. And, so I had a little bit of real estate, I guess, investing experience from that vantage point. And it was very, very limited. But as I kind of learned more about real estate just from some of those conversations, I decided to dig a little bit deeper. And long story short, I decided to get my real estate license, and I started selling real estate properties on the side. I started selling residential real estate on the side of my corporate gig initially. And I quickly learned that I wasn't interested in being a residential real estate sales broker. Just through that process, it was a very emotional thing for folks to make those decisions based on, the carpet and, the paint colors and what the cabinets look like and so forth. But as I kind of peeled back those layers of the onion, I started to learn more about the opportunities in real estate. And I started to learn, how sort of the, wealthy people look at real estate and how they leverage this tool. And I started to dig deeper in terms of income producing real estate, commercial real estate, and so on and so forth. And so I did transition into being a commercial real estate broker. I actually ultimately founded a commercial real estate brokerage company and found a lot of success in that. However, through the course of that time, I learned so much by, engaging in that business and really digging deep in terms of what are investors actually looking to obtain by investing in commercial real estate, whether it was retail properties, office properties, raw land for development, or even land banking, and of course, apartments. And I really developed a niche in apartments throughout the time. And it was, to a certain degree, a little bit of luck, but a little bit of, I guess, alignment with the asset class. And I kind of became known as the apartment guy just through developing relationships. And, one deal leads to another, which leads to 2 to 3 others. And I kind of became known as like the source of multifamily opportunities in my market. And throughout that time, I was investing heavily in my own personal development, my own personal growth. And as I'm selling properties and as I'm, developing my business and growing my business to a degree that the success was nice. And, I was certainly riding the wave of that market cycle that grew. I got into the business in 2013. And throughout that time, we had a growth period that was pretty substantial now looking back. But through that time, I really learned about, the difference in brokering those investments and actually making investments was substantial. And it was something that I wanted to make another kind of transition and leap into. And so I started investing in real estate in 2016. My first deal was an 8-unit apartment building. And man, I learned a lot of lessons on that first deal. I made a lot of mistakes. Ultimately, it was a very successful deal. But, there were some hardships and some challenges and some bumps and bruises along the way. But that was my first deal. And I was still brokering deals for a few years thereafter. But I really learned that, if you really want to pave a lifestyle through real estate, and if you really want to create substantial success, it is about, allocating your dollars towards commercial real estate and multifamily real estate in my case. And so that's how I got into the business. Ultimately, we founded CF Capital in 2020, which was kind of a unique year to create a company like this, a private equity investment firm. But looking back, it's been a great ride so far. So 5 years in the rear view, and now we own and operate about 1,500 units in our region, really in the Midwest in particular. And so that's really been my journey, and it's been fun to continue to grow. But I think it's definitely a growth experience because your success is definitely a lagging indicator of how you're investing in yourself. That's been something that I've become super passionate about, is not only investing in real estate, but investing in yourself, and something that you and I have obviously shared a passion for through our relationship, not only personally, but professionally as well, in a coaching type of relationship. And that's been something that I've been passionate about, is not only investing in coaching myself and hiring coaches and finding ways to up level not only my perspective, but my strategies, my approach to business, my approach to, my own identity, and up leveling that to a point where, I can create the conditions of my life that I want to create, not that, I just accept. So anyway, those have been some of the, key, sort of pivot points throughout the last 12 and a half years or so since I kind of found myself growing in the real estate business. But a little bit of background there for me, and hopefully that all makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a tremendous journey that you just summarized there. And in terms of how things played out, I mean, you went from 8 units to fast forward to today where you're at, over 1,500 units. And I'm just curious, I'm sure it's something that you struggle with, that we all really struggle with, is imposter syndrome, and maybe not knowing if, you're capable of doing these bigger type of deals. I'm sure when you hadn't had as much real estate experience, doing the 8-unit deal was probably pretty scary. And then, successively going up from there. So I'm just curious what kind of a mindset shift occurred to go from 8 units to now where you're at today.
Man, that's a good point. I do think that we all have a little bit of imposter syndrome, and something that you and I have talked about is that, an imposter syndrome is actually probably a pretty good sign. It's kind of the sign of a well-adjusted human being. You actually have some humility and perhaps, to a certain degree, your current quote unquote limitations, or recognition that you have an opportunity to improve and grow. But there's a certain degree, there's a line where if that imposter syndrome, precedes your ability to take action, it can obviously be extremely detrimental. Something that I have not really run into a lot throughout the past decade plus has been, a limiting belief system that I can't achieve something. And, to a certain degree, it's probably been to my detriment and some mistakes. I've always believed in myself. I've always believed in myself maybe a little bit more than I should have at certain times. So it hasn't really preceded my ability to take action, but I continue every day, every month, every week, every year. I learn a new sort of limiting belief or blind spot that I have had of what is possible. And sometimes I have to ask myself the question is like, am I just saying that we can't do something? Like, for example, I appreciate what you said in the beginning of this conversation of being a great father. It's something that I'm extremely passionate about. It's something that I want to be a phenomenal father and someone who's very active in my children's lives. And, one thing in our house is we do not say can't. If I hear my kids say, I can't do something, it's like, oh, wait a minute. We don't say that's like that literally is a 4-letter word in our house. And so if I hear you say, I can't, the question instead of I can't, it's how can I? Or I need help right now. Something that I know both you and I are both very passionate about is this concept called who, not how. And it's something that I've really had to unlearn a lot of. I grew up middle class. My whole thought process was go to school, get good grades, go to a higher education, get good grades, get a good job, and climb that ladder, which really all came down to what could I do? What are the things that I could accomplish? And some of the things that I've really had to unlearn is instead of me doing everything, it's finding who can help me get to where I want to go and do things through and with other people. So, those have been some of the limiting beliefs is that, hey, if I want to do big things in real estate, to a certain degree, it's like, wow, all right, well, I got to do a lot. And yes, that's true. You have to be very committed. You have to be consistent and you have to play the long game. But I think something that I'm still learning and I'm still getting better at is leaning on other people. And one of the things that, I think we've really embraced this concept, especially over the past year or past few years as we've scaled our company and we still have significant growth ahead of us, is really leaning into this concept of who, not how. But also, from here, it's really about leaning further into the right who's, because, you got to kiss a lot of frogs. And there are a lot of people who either don't have the appropriate skill set or willingness to be humble and grow and learn from mistakes and willingness to accept challenges and say, you know what, I haven't done something right on your behalf. And so, let me fix that. Some people want to cover up their mistakes or they don't want to look bad and that kind of stuff. And so, I do think that the continued growth is leaning on the right people, leading them in the correct way, in a way that supports their intentions and supports where they're wanting to go. Because frankly, I'm also their who to a certain degree in whatever it is that they're looking to accomplish. So it's kind of finding that win-win mentality and leaning into more of an intelligent way to lean into who, not how, and getting more sophisticated with how I apply this principle. So I'm not sure if I'm exactly answering your question or not, but, to a certain degree early on, it was like I had to pull myself up by my bootstraps. And that was really the thought process. But to really leap and to get beyond that, it was to really lean into this concept that I'm extremely passionate about to this day, which is really leadership and leading other people and doing it from a place of giving and in a place of abundance. In a place of, true integrity. I'm not trying to rip people off. I don't want to rip others off. And I know that and I feel that, but it is about getting better. It's about getting more sophisticated in the notion of, if we want to go further, we've got to go together. And so that's been kind of a big component for me.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've talked at length about that book, Who Not How, and about the philosophy behind it, and really the idea that it's kind of funny, all throughout, in my case, public school, you're taught, work on your own, and kind of, failure is the end of it all, and you can't, collaborate or anything like that. That would be cheating in school. And when in real life, as we all know, and especially in entrepreneurship, you really have to have people which you depend on as part of your team, and that kind of cover up some of these or really supplement your blind spots. And that's the common grain amongst all really successful entrepreneurs is they're keenly aware of what their own superpowers are, and then they supplement or augment themselves with these other people who have, maybe other skill sets. So it's really interesting to hear that from you. Now, in terms of your constant improvement, that's another idea that we've talked about is, the extent that your business will only improve to the level of which you're improving, you personally. And so it's a reflection of your own self-development. I'm just curious, along those same lines, for some of our folks here that are trying to level up, what are some of the habits or routines that you regularly do or pursue on a daily basis to ensure that you're constantly improving?
Well, so there's no perfect like line up and to the right. Everybody wants to hear this. Well, we're just compounding and we're getting better every single day. There are definitely days, weeks, months, even years where you take a step back and you feel like you're not making progress. So I definitely want to kind of speak to that just briefly. Because, a lot of times you talk about personal development, professional development, and really the expectation is like every year, we're literally every measurable is growing. And so I do want to make this kind of comment along the lines of like, this is not perfect. But I do think that regardless, the mindset and owning this belief system that we are compounding 1% daily is very, very critical. It's key. In terms of habits, I mean, habits are ultimately kind of the foundation towards, stepping into this compounding improvement. And so in terms of habits, like for me, like I think it's important to feed your mind and engaging in conversations like this, reading great books, going to conferences, even kind of listening to your own mind, whether it's through meditation, journaling, and so forth. I think those are key principles and key habits that have really supported my growth. But, first, to a certain degree, like my habits have really carried me through a lot of life transformations. Like, over the last 3 years, for example, my wife and I had twins, and, a lot of those things have been turned upside down in terms of like, what does the daily routine look like? I mean, that is a total life transformation to, go from not being a parent to being a parent, much less going from 0 to 2. And now my wife has another one on the way. And so we're very blessed and grateful for that. But, I think about like, when you ask me the question about habits, I just think about how my day starts every day. It's, I get out of bed around 5:30 or so, and, I get out and I'm like, all right, let's drink some water, and what I typically do is I'll meditate for 5 to 10 minutes and I'll read a book, and I'm constantly reading a book. I've always got a book that I'm reading, whether it's, stuff on business, finance, mindset, personal development, biographies, some fiction. I need to read more fiction. I would like to read more fiction. But, every single day it's like clockwork where I'm doing that. And I also am a big proponent of physical activity. I work out probably 6 days a week, at least 5 days a week, every week. And so that's weight training, high intensity interval training. I'm also training for a 10K race. I'm trying to beat a personal time. So, I do a lot of that kind of stuff, but I think that is key. I try to, one habit that I've really leaned into is like treating myself like an athlete. Because I think as an entrepreneur, what I've learned over the past decade plus is that the more that I invest in myself, my health, the better that I can be in terms of my own leadership ability, my own ability to make good decisions, my ability to bring high energy to what I'm doing, because it is absolutely required. And so that's something that's certainly compounded. Another habit is just, what am I feeding myself? And so we're very conscious of the things that we're putting in our body, trying to be cognizant of, removing seed oils and reducing sugar as much as possible, eating high protein, and thinking about just health and wellness from those vantage points. Of course, spending time with my family, like my priorities are my family and what we're doing and the legacy that we're creating and the generational prosperity that we're being intentional on. So it is about spending time with the most important people and having quality conversations around things that we're thankful for. Embracing gratitude is a huge habit for me. It's like, even when you feel like you have so many problems, because our minds want to focus on the problems. And, that's probably a benefit in many regards, is that human beings, we are kind of negative focused. And so we get hyper focused on a problem to a large degree because we were built that way. We were wired that way to be able to solve problems, to be able to overcome those problems. A habit also in that regard is to look at problems as gifts. And instead of saying, woe is me, I have all of these issues, it's I get to get better as a result of these problems. And so the habit of owning this mindset of 1% rather, regardless of the progress that I feel like I'm making or not making is critical. When I feel like things are taking a step back in whatever regard, I can own the mindset that says, no matter what, I'm going to win. And, there's this thought process of I'm either going to win or I'm going to learn. And in my estimation, both of those are a win. And so no matter what happens, I can control the controllables on the things that I'm doing to invest in myself in terms of like health, fitness, family, spirituality, mindset, gratitude, all of those things. But then letting that sort of bleed into the things that I'm doing on a professional level. So those are really some of the like foundational habits that I engage in, but I think that it just changes. And that's the other thing too, is like being willing to be adaptable and receive feedback because, again, like another phrase that I am super passionate about is that failure is not fatal, but it is feedback. And the only way to grow from feedback or from failure is to receive that and to adapt and to grow through it. And a lot of times you hear people say, hey, I'm just going through it. Well, my response to that would be, instead of going through it, why don't you grow through it? And, I think that that's a habit as well. So conditioning your mind, I think, is key. And, conditioning your mind to say, you know what, no matter what happens out there, I'm going to continue to grow has really just supported my continued evolution.
Wow. So many different gems there in terms of different practices that, some of our folks can adopt and incorporate into their own life. We talked about a number of different things there that people can put into place today, regardless of where you are at in your journey, regardless of, most of those things you mentioned there, you really don't need anything in the way of resources. It's more or less things that you can do to habituate your mind for success. And along those lines, I was just curious. We've obviously worked together more on a coaching level, but I was wondering if you could talk about the importance of, say, coaching or peers or really mentorship, I guess, in a word, to your personal success.
Well, you become who you spend your time with, first of all. And I think if you're not careful with that and you're not intentional with that, you are going to become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And for me, coaching has been a total game changer. The reason why I coach, on a kind of smaller level on a one-to-one basis, outside of my main practice is because I love the experience and I love pouring into other people. And I know that it can be transformational. I know that, through our experience together, you've been able to find a tremendous amount of value from that. And I feel the exact same way. And I always say that the teacher is really who learns the most. And it's not to say that I have every answer or I'm the sage on the stage, but it's that I truly care about other people and I truly want to see, what's best for other people. And investing in this type of experience where you are saying, hey, I need support, and recognizing that, what, I don't have all the answers, and that instead of me just saying, hey, I'm going to do it all, I'm giving someone else the opportunity to really pour into me. And so, the question about how can coaching or how can, surrounding yourself with other mentors really up-level your game? It's kind of an immeasurable type of question, to be honest with you. I think that if you're not really thinking about the people who are conditioning your mind or conditioning your thought process, then you're really missing a tremendous opportunity to, maximize your life. Ultimately, at the end of the day, like real estate and business and entrepreneurship is really all about creating outcomes that you want in your life. And so I think that coaching can give you clarity on, okay, well, what is the real challenge here? And also understand more clearly, where is it that you want to go? And clarify what are your priorities. Clarify what you should be doing versus what you shouldn't be doing. And, or, is there a different way to look at this issue? Is there a different framing that is potentially, without engaging in, holding us back? Because, there's certainly been experiences in my life that if I hadn't kind of re-looked at an issue with the help of someone else, then I would have missed a tremendous opportunity. And I think that that's really kind of the key because, sometimes it's like, you have to kind of look at an issue in a few different ways. And sometimes, we get in our own way. And sometimes, just that one powerful question or one powerful idea can really mean all the difference. And, there's really kind of minimal shifts that are required to really go from good to great, great to excellent, excellent to extraordinary. And some of those things, some of those shifts that I've made over the years and some of the shifts that I've been able to support others with have been completely game changing. And so these are some of the reasons why I think surrounding yourself intentionally with people who are going to challenge you, support really the outcome, and support clarity of action is critical. And, it's something that I've been intentional about creating, relationships with. I've been a part of masterminds, I've led masterminds, and I think those are great ways to find people who have a like-minded thought process, and really a like-minded thought process in terms of like, I'm not going to settle for average. And, a lot of people, I think they settle for average because of the fact that they're surrounded by average. If you really think about it, the law of average is what it is, because at the end of the day, the numbers kind of tell the story. But you have to be intentional to create conditions that are greater than average or beyond. And so you have to be really intentional about who you're surrounding yourself with.
Yeah, so important. I think that's kind of evidenced by the fact that if you ever familiar with anybody that's gone through addiction or has been through that process, one of the first things that they say is, when you come back from being in this other environment, this rehabilitation environment, you can't put yourself back in the same environment or ecosystem which created the temptations or the catalyst for you to give in to those temptations. So I definitely see that on the self-improvement side as well. I know from my own journey, being in those masterminds, surrounding yourself with people that are doing it at a higher level, it also, really for me, it proved that, I'm capable of doing this. If I saw this person and they have no more inherent skills than myself or know-how than myself, and they're doing it, then I really have no excuse. So it creates some kind of self-accountability there as well. So that's another great habit for folks in our audience to take home. If you can't find a mastermind, create your own. There are tons of people out there, I'm sure, in everybody's network that they want to strive to be like. And if you can provide value to them, then they'll, I'm sure that they'll be able and willing to give their time to help you get where you're trying to go.
Yeah, and one thing I would just add to that is like, when the path of least resistance kicks in, that's when we find ourselves unwilling to really commit to, the challenges of what is required to get to where we want to go. And so I think accountability is key as well, whether you have friends that are saying, look, you committed to doing something, or whether it's a coach or, part of a mastermind that's saying, look, you committed to these outcomes in your life. So what's preventing you from getting there? I think you're really missing the boat if you are not being intentional about creating conditions around you that are holding you accountable and facilitating relationships that can say, hey, look, here's what you said you were going to do. Are you going to commit to that? And what adjustments are you going to make? So I think that's another key as well. It's like friends, partners, coaches that I've had over the years and that I have to this day that, hold me accountable, that, I have accountability calls with on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, that say, hey, look, this is what we discussed last time. Where are you on these matters? I think is a huge catalyst, even for someone like myself, who I would describe as a pretty driven person, just naturally driven for whatever reason. Throughout my upbringing, I've just become, someone who is driven for creating an extraordinary life. I think that accountability factor is another big piece that is a big opportunity for folks.
Absolutely. Yeah, creating those conditions. I like the way you put that. I almost liken it to a system. There's a quote out there about, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And I just think of accountability partners in the form of mentorship, peers, whatever the case is just another system to keep you striving forward.
Absolutely.
So, I want to kind of be conscious of your time, Tyler. You've been recognized by many in the multifamily world as a thought leader, and this interview definitely proved that fact. So, really appreciate you delivering value as always. You are a selfless giver. I mean, a lot of things that you said in the beginning of the call, I definitely think 10x are true on your side as well. So, I wanted to thank you for that. And then also wanted to express, I guess, if somebody is interested in learning more about what you're doing with CF Capital or coaching or whatever the case may be, how would they get in touch with you?
Yeah, they would just go to cfcapllc.com to learn more about CF Capital. So we're an investment company that we invest in large multifamily communities across the Midwest, really Kentucky, Indiana, Tennessee, and Ohio. And so we invest in cash flowing value add opportunities where we go in and reposition assets and, really deliver cash flow, tax advantages capital appreciation, and of course, capital preservation. Those are really our core principles in terms of our investment thesis, investment focus. So if folks want to learn more about us and learn more about future opportunities, they can go to cfcapllc.com. They can also go to, if you're interested in learning more about potentially coaching, you can go to coachwithtyler.com.
Amazing. Well, again, thank you so much for your time. You've dropped so many gems. In fact, I'm going to have to re-listen to this 3 or 4 times to pick up some of these things, but really appreciate it again, Tyler, as always, for serving the community.
Mark, it's always my pleasure, my friend, and thank you for everything you're doing, and congrats on all the continued success.
Thank you, sir.